Good morning, everyone. We'll get started here at about 10:30. So if you want to get comfy and uh, take a minute to do any sort of last minute adjustments, last minute bathroom breaks, water runs, coffee runs, whatever you'd like to do, please feel free to do that. And we'll get started here in about a minute or two. Thanks.
I'm just going to give it one more minute, see if there's anybody else who's going to trickle in. Looks like we have a few folks still coming in. All right, everybody, welcome. Thanks for joining us on a Saturday morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. And if folks continue to trickle in, that's great. Just kind of before we start, I just want to let you all know, if you have any questions as we go through the webinar, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we will cover those at the end. I'll be sure to read those out. So just to get started, my name is Kate Daly. I'm one of the archivists here at the Atlanta History Center, and I am the project manager for this NHPRC grant that this webinar series is a part of. This is the fourth webinar in our series, Ownership and Sale of Records of Land and Buildings. So let me go here. All right, and so again, this is the fourth of a series of 5 webinars. These are funded by the National Historical Publications and Records Commission as part of the National Archives. So again, you're here for the Ownership and Sale of Property webinar, and then we will have one more called Roadblocks of Property and Neighborhood Research in September of 2025. If you're interested in taking a look at any of the other webinars that we've previously done, those are actually recorded and available on our NHPRC landing page, which I'm going to pop that in the chat as well so that y'all can see that. So yeah, feel free to check out some of those previous webinars, and this one will also be recorded and available on that landing page when we're through here. All right. Our speakers today are Marnie Davis and Erica Haig. They have joined me this morning. So Marnie Davis is a historian at Georgia State University. She is the author of Jews and Booze, Becoming American in the Age of Prohibition. She is currently writing a book about the history of immigration, race, and urban development in Atlanta with a focus on Black-Jewish relations. And Erica Haig is our collections manager at the Atlanta History Center and our just kind of land use guru here over at the History Center. So you'll be hearing from them in just a moment. And then I also just wanted to mention some of the other collections that have been funded by the NHPRC grant. So this webinar is part of a larger grant to process land use collections at the Atlanta History Center. So we have finished the Atlanta Urban Design Commission records and visual arts materials, as well as the Atlanta Department of City Planning records. We are currently working on the Atlanta Real Estate Board appraisals, and those should be completed and available at the History Center in December of 2025. As we complete them, the finding aids will be listed in our Search the Collections portal through the History Center, as well as that NHPRC landing page that I posted. And I will also post the Search the Collections page. Oh, excuse me, I don't know why that's happening. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Marnie. I'm going to stop control if folks want to take control, and I will keep an eye on the chat.
Okay, well, thanks, Kate, and welcome everybody. I'm so delighted to talk to you all about property research. As Kate said, I am currently writing a book. I'm actually also writing an article, different topics, but they all involved research into property ownership, who owned what, when, who sold what to whom, when, and how neighborhoods are developed and communities are developed in that way. So I've done a lot of this kind of research that I assume you're here because you're interested in. So I'm just really happy to speak to you about a resource, a vital, fascinating resource for learning the history of ownership of a specific property in Fulton County. Now, you might not be interested in doing research in Fulton County specifically. That's fine. Just hang on until the end of my talk. And I'll say a little bit about if you're interested in doing research in other counties in Georgia. But everything that I say today will definitely apply. So the resource that I'm going to talk about today are property deeds. These are legal contracts of the transfer of land ownership from one entity to another. So it could be from a person to a person. It could be from a person to a communal institution. It could be from a communal institution to a financial institution. It could, be anything, but it's really just about property ownership, who owns what and where. And the property deeds archives in Atlanta at Fulton County are held at the Fulton County Courthouse. And the Fulton County Courthouse is downtown in Atlanta. It's at 136 Pryor Street Southwest, which is at the corner of MLK Jr. Drive. There's plenty of parking. You have to pay for the parking, but there's plenty of parking parking lots all around the area. So what you do is you go into the building at these front doors. You're going to go through a metal detector, so just keep that in mind. You can't bring any glass items. You also shouldn't bring any food items or even beverages. I mean, sometimes people have beverages in there, but do remember that these are irreplaceable historical artifacts. And so, of course, the desire is to protect them. So you're going to go in through the metal detectors, go to the elevators that are right behind the metal detectors, and go down one floor to floor G. So you'll be on floor 1. You're going to go down to the ground floor. It's confusing. Just that's what it is. Go to floor G. And next slide, please. And thank you. And once you're there, you will get off the elevators at the main desk. You will go to the left, and you're going to go past a whole station of computer terminals. And what you're going to, if you're doing research into the history of these projects, I mean, if you're doing something that's more recent, all of the records from about 1980 forward have been digitized, or at least most of them have been digitized. But for our discussion today, we're going to be thinking about more historical records. And so what you're going to want to do is go to the early indexes. And so you can see where they are. They are on the other side of where the plats are. And I'll say something about the plats in a moment, but we're really going to focus on these deeds. And so you can see here that this is the map, that this is actually Erica's creation. Thank you, Erica, for creating this map. But you can also see in the photograph that I took, don't bring your hamburger, as the sign says. But you can see that this is where these early indexes are. And if you look beyond the indexes, you can see the volumes. Each of these, there are tens of thousands of these volumes, each of which contain hundreds of property deeds. So there's so much there to potentially look at. But it's important to have a focus to your research, and that's what I'm going to try and help you to do today. So today we're going to look at the records going all the way back to the 19th century. In order to do productive and efficient research, and research is also, you just end up spending a lot of time kind of looking around and hoping to find that needle in a haystack, but you also want to come in with some information that will help you to be more efficient and productive. In order to do that, you will need several pieces of information. One is at least one of the two. You want to have either the name of the property's seller, which is what's known as the grantor, or the property's buyer, which is known as the grantee, either the person who's selling the property or who's buying the property. Unfortunately, you can't just go in with an address because that's just not how they're listed. They are listed these deeds are made accessible and organized by the names of the entities that are buying and selling. So you do need to have one of those, but you only need one. Two is great, one is sufficient to get a lot of information. The second thing that you need is the district and land lot where the property is located. And that is not necessarily something that you would know without looking at this specific website. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So if you click on this website, and I'll pop that into the chat when I'm done speaking, so you can access it. This is a map that's provided by Fulton County and the city of Atlanta of all of the districts and land lots. I think that there are 3 different districts that are part of Fulton County, and each of these districts has been divided up into 202-acre land lots. And this division happened all the way back in the 1820s. But they're how sort of these documents are organized. So you can go to this website, and you can't do it on this specific slide, but when you're at the website, you can scroll in. You can also, if you look at the top left here, I'm sorry, the top right, you can see that you could just type in an address and it'll take you to it. So you do need to know. So for our research today, I'm looking for a property that I know is in land lot 87 in District 14 in the southwest of the city in a neighborhood that's known as Pittsburgh. So that's what I'll be looking for. And so you want to make sure that you have that information when you go in. Okay, next slide. Then you also need the street name of the property. That is probably the information that you would have easiest access to. A possible year of sale. You do not need that information. And as a matter of fact, you might have to go like back and forth among the indexes to figure out what year you're looking for. But that's good information too. So here is an example of a page from one of the earliest grantor indexes. And so you can kind of see how they're organized. It's alphabetized by grantor, then but actually not yet by grantee. It's first organized by grantor, then it's organized by where it's located in the city. So then the district and land lot, then alphabetized by grantee, and then sometimes it's alphabetized by street name and sometimes not. That can be a little bit persnickety. But you can look at this, see how it's organized. So if you'll look at, so the grantor is the seller of the property and the grantee is the buyer of the property. Then if you can see where it says land lot and district and street name, and that's the information that you're going to want to be using. So I was looking for information about Basil Woolley, and that's how I found him in the grantor index. And you can see that all the properties that he's selling are organized first by district and land lot, then by buyer. And the specific property I'm looking for was purchased from Basil Woolley by Floyd Beck. And you can see, if you'll click on the next one, and you can see him right there. And if you look all the way to the right of on the page, you can see the volume and page number. I'll say just a little bit about them. Basil Woolley was, his main job was, he was a doctor and pharmacist who specialized in opium and alcohol treatment. He had devised a particular cure for opium and alcohol addiction. But he had a little bit of a side hustle doing real estate speculation. So he had purchased a lot of property in land lot 87 and in some other land lots. So you can see 74 as well, which is just to the north. And he was selling it to whoever wanted to buy it. And Floyd Beck was a day laborer who I think had just moved to the city when he purchased this property. I found record of him living in Griffin County in 1880. So this might have been actually the first property that he bought in the Atlanta area. If I had the name Floyd Beck and I didn't have Basil Woolley, that's fine, because what we're looking at here is the grantor index. Instead, we would go to the grantee index from the same time period. And I would just look up B for Beck, and I would find him, and all of the same information would be present here, including the volume and page number. So volume F3, page 155, these oldest volumes, basically the entirety of the 19th century and into some of the early 20th century, will all be on the wall nearest to the computer terminals. So go there, find volume F3, go to page 155, and here's what you'll see. Here's the property deed. This is the sale of property by Basil Woolley to Floyd Beck, and you can, this is, I can only, I understand, kind of a daunting thing to look at this kind of 19th century cursive, but I assure you that the more you do it, the easier it'll get to decipher the old time chicken scratch. So you can see here that in the 1886, Basil Woolley sold this property. That's the party of the first part, sold the property to Floyd Beck, who is the party of the second part, for $231.45. Now the next section is really hard to read. But again, it gets a lot easier with time. It's also very much boilerplate. So I've done a little bit of a translation here for you, and you can see that it's near the city of Atlanta. It's not actually yet in the city of Atlanta because the city line was still to the north of where this property is in the 1880s. And so this is a property that commences at a point 50 feet from the northeast corner of Fletcher and McDaniel Street. And so this is basically telling us that it's one property north of the corner of Fletcher and McDaniel. And then it is 50 by 103 on both sides. And if you look at, if we could just get one more click. If you had scrolled in at that website for the land lot and district, you would see that this is exactly that property. And you can see that it's 50 feet to the north. So this is how you can kind of align current property divisions and spaces with how they are being described in the past. And like I said, at first it can be kind of daunting, but it is definitely a matter of practice makes better. And this is such a fascinating resource. And it is, please understand that it is all very much publicly available and accessible to you. And if you're interested in researching either a person and their history of property ownership, or you want to figure out like the history of a very specific property and are able to get the name of a person. And I can say a little bit in the Q&A about how if all you know is yourself, you can work your way backwards. For my own property, starting just with my name, I was able to go all the way back to the property's first owner, which was after the property was built in 1932. So it's really fun. If the property you're researching is not in Fulton County, don't sweat. What you should do is start with your county's clerk of superior court. And just give them a call and ask them where the property records are. They're more likely than not in that building, and that is actually the case also with Fulton County. And if always keep in mind that these are public documents and they are accessible to you. So it might you need to get the right person on the phone. If your county or town or city has a history center or a historical association, they might also be able to not only provide some useful resources, but also to advise you about how you can proceed with the property in your very specific place. And speaking of which, I will now pass the baton on to Erica, and she is going to tell us about some of the real estate research that you can do at the Atlanta History Center.
Yes, thank you so much, Marnie. So sort of in a similar vein of what Marnie's been talking about as to deeds and availability of deeds, we have one very large collection that has a wide variety of deeds. I'm going to show you what they kind of look like. These are the Mitchell and Mitchell real estate records. They range from 1849 to 1958, and these are mostly abstracts of title. That means that there was some sort of litigation on the property, and they have researched back already all of the deed book and page numbers for that property in order to pursue or in order to put to rest these legal concerns. These are mostly in Fulton County, but there are properties that are covered in Cobb, DeKalb, and Gwinnett. This is a fully, once you get this PDF from us, this is a fully clickable link here at the top, so you can actually go in and put in your district and land lot and see what populates out of the collection that might be relevant. This is a collection that's not digitized, so you do need to make an appointment to come in to view these items, but when you do that appointment, you just need to ask for the relevant box and folder from MSS 448. There's also a lot of other deeds scattered in our collection from other donors. So if you know your district and land lot, you can always put that in to our search box for search the collections and see what we have. We do have a large number of plat maps that have been scanned, so that's also pretty exciting. This is just a sample of items from Mitchell and Mitchell. Again, these are organized by district and land lot, and you can see similar to what Marnie was showing, there is plat maps usually in these, along with a lot of text. A lot of these are typed, some of them are handwritten, some of them are a mix of both. So this is actually a really interesting one here where they have gone back many years in the past to research this property. So they've gone back to 1825 for Henry County, which was a part of it was absorbed into Fulton. So very exciting. This is another one. So you can see that this one has a hand-drawn plat map, but this still has the abstract of title, and it's going back again to 1825. So this is worth looking into, especially if you know that there's been litigation on your property in the past, because this is one that has already done the work for you. It will have the deed book and page numbers, and then an abstract of what that deed said. So this is a really great way to sort of fast track your research. There's not all properties are not like in this one, but it's worth checking out for sure. We also have the Fulton County tax plat books that are almost all digitized. So if you click through to this link and find the district and land lot and the years that you're interested in, a red box should populate once you click through that link, and you can click on it to view the scanned copies of the plat maps that you're interested in. These range from 1940 to 1980, and they generally show the actual plot of land or the lot itself, in addition to the owner and the date of sale, and about like how much they're paying for taxes and who paid taxes in what year. These are arranged by district and land lot and then by date. So you'll see multiple times that there's like District 14, land lot 87, and 3 or 4 different books because they range from the 40s through the 80s. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in just a second. We also have the Fulton County tax plat cards that come in 2 different years. That's 1950 and 1970. These generally show a sketch of the structure, a list of the different building materials, value, sometimes owner's name. They do always have address as well as your entire tax ID there at the top. And these are arranged by district and land lot. And then we have 2 groups of these from the 1950s and 1970s. So they are by date too. So when you get to the tax plat books, this is what you're going to see on the overall district and land lot plat. So at the bottom here, you see that it says 8714. That is the 87th land lot in the 14th district. And you see that it's divvied up with these different large numbers and dashed lines. These are the square. So if you have your full tax parcel ID from your tax bill, or if you've looked it up on the Fulton County Tax Assessor's website, you should already know the square because it breaks down pretty easily and you can see those divisions between the zeros. But if you're not sure, you can always look at the congested map here and say, okay, we're interested here in, I think it's square 5. And when we zoom in on that, or square 6, excuse me, at the top of it, it'll have the square number, and then the parcel IDs are actually these red numbers in the corner of the property. So here we're looking at, or we're interested in the same one that Marnie was talking about earlier. It is listed as square or number 4 here, and in the corners, that is 88. So I've zoomed in on 88. This is from the 50s, and we see Charles Beck as the owner, and we'll find out a little bit about Charles here in a second. And then we also have this sale registered below him to the Georgia Beck Beatty et al. So this happened in January of 55, and you can see that the deed book here is 2971, and then the page number for that is 368, which is pretty cool to see. We also have another, it looks like administrator maybe, for that, Clayton Buggs, that was probably administering the estate or doing legal things for Georgia here. This is a lot of information, and sometimes it's not useful. Like, I don't know if anyone really cares about how much in taxes was paid on this property, which is the rightmost column here. It was assessed for $1,570.56. That might not be helpful for you, but I do think that the ownership and then the availability of seeing which deed book and page number this transfer happened on helps to sort of fast track and helps you, be able to see when things might have happened at this property. The Fulton County tax plat cards similarly have at the very top right, you'll see the land lot, the district, the square, and the unit. So these match up to the tax plat books. But you can see here that there's a variety of other information that's happening on this one. We do have on the left-hand side, I zoomed this in a little bit to see a sort of floor plan generally of what the house looked like. So here we can see that it is a probably one-story building, and then the dimensions of each side of that. It looks like it had a porch that wrapped around sort of the front in a little zigzag shape. And we also have here the scale that this was drawn to, and then also when it was actually drawn. So this was drawn in 1953. On the right-hand side, we have a lot of information about this as well. So we know what the substructure was. It was on piers. It was a wood frame house. The roof was a gable roof with composition tiles, it looks like. Unfinished attic, pine floors, and it looks like plaster walls. It also has the total rooms as 4, and then 3 fixture bath and a chimney as the heating element. It did have electricity, so that's exciting. And then it also has a variety of other information about different notes that might be there, and then also different dimensions. This is also going to generally have the tax evaluation that they assessed it for down in this last third section of the form. And this is something that exists even if it's not a house that you're looking into. So for instance, these are the John Hope Homes ones. And so here you can see that they've outlined and put in every single unit size or building size, and then broken that down. And then on the back of the card here, they've got a whole just map of the entire area that they've printed out and platted. So this is really helpful if you're looking into like literally anything. These exist for all of Fulton County, and we hold them here at the Atlanta History Center. The other places that record land ownership that are maybe a little bit more broader, all of these are accessible through the Keenan Research Center here at the Atlanta History Center. But the United States Federal Census does have owner and street name starting in 1880. We'll look at a few of those. Those are accessible paid on Ancestry and for free via family search for select years. Newspapers also generally list sale or transfer of property by district and land lot, and sometimes by owner name or the grantor grantee name. And then also Atlanta City directories are a wealth of information for owner and names and who lived where what, or who lived where when, I should say. And then also, just as Marnie mentioned before, county deed room records are a wealth of information for this type of research. And to sort of facilitate that, we're not only doing this webinar, but we also have a guide that's linked here that is covers Fulton, DeKalb, and Cobb County. You might not live in one of those three counties, and that's okay. Please use this as a resource to sort of identify what you might encounter, and then go find your county clerk's office and see if you can access those records. You should be able to, because they are public record. So we're going to start in 1950. This is the most recent census record. And we see here Charlie Beck is living with Georgia Beatty, which is his sister, it looks like, and then Ruth as well in 1950. And then on the right-hand side, you can see under column 2 at the top, the address is 1060, and then McDaniel Street Southwest is in column 1. These are not usually indexed, so you do need to have a name to search these by, or you can go through area by area if you know which section of census you're looking for. Working backwards, we can see that Charlie also owned this property in 1940, and it looks like his mother was still alive at that time and living with him, as well as a niece, Rosa Banks. 1930, we also see that his mother is listed as the head of the household, and it's the same or approximately the same set of siblings that are all living together. McDaniel's is pretty faint, but you can still read it, as well as the 1060. In 1920, the address actually changed, which is not uncommon. There was a mass renumbering in Atlanta in 1927, and because of that, we saw a lot of street number changes or street name changes around that time. So it's not uncommon to see that difference of address shift. Here we have a lot of, I think I counted 13 people living in this house with Emma as the head of household. So lots of different names that you could dive into and see who they are and how they're all related. In 1910, this one is also pretty faint, but you can see that it's listed as 473, and Charlie is listed as the son here. There's a secondary part that was on the previous page that has Emma as well as the head of the household, but it's listed as 473, which is an interesting sort of flip-flop of the numbers. I wasn't able to track them past the 1910 census, but we do have here the 1880 census, which is the earliest one that has street names added to it. You can see that this is sort of similar style, but a lot of times this is more script or more cursive than block print, which is what they used in more recent federal census records. Here you have Haynes Street listed in the first column, and then those house addresses listed in the column right next to it. So you can track and see who is living where when. Newspaper records are something else that I mentioned earlier, right? So these are warranty deeds for DeKalb County transfers. So it usually has the evaluation and then who is selling what to who, and then a description, a very brief description of the property. So this is even a smaller abstract than might be in like an abstract of title document. But these are generally things that had to be published, or they decided to start publishing them at a certain time. So it's always worth searching the newspapers. That might sound really intimidating, but we use newspapers.com here at Keenan Research Center, which is full text searchable. So if you have a district and land lot, we can put that in and search for that. Or if you have a name, you can also search by name. You can also do both. Sometimes this does pull up by address if they have the address listed, but you'll see a lot of these are more descriptive, right? So it's lot 31 of the Woodlawn subdivision on north side of Boulevard DeKalb, 241 feet west of Lakeview Avenue, and then the date. So it's not usually by address for this, but if you have a name or if you have a district land lot, this is going to be very helpful. The Atlanta City Directory is very helpful if you're looking for something in Atlanta specifically. What is Atlanta and what is in like actually covered by Atlanta has changed a lot over time, right? But if you're looking at the directories, you can start more recently and then work your way back. There's two sections of the directory typically. There's what we call the crisscross or reverse lookup, which is what you're seeing in the bottom right here, where you have the street name and then it's listing under the street name every owner that's there. Now, there's all of these symbols, but you see the like zero, it looks like a zero within a circle. That actually means owner. So everyone that has one of those in this column is an owner of the household. This is not necessarily something that they verified without, like they just asked the person right when they're recording this information. So they're not verifying it anywhere. But this is generally something that you can find ownership records for. In the other part of the city directory by name, you can also verify who is doing what. So we have here Charles, a freight handler for the North Carolina and St. Louis Railway, and he's says renting at 1060, but he was the son of Emma. So maybe he was renting from his mother. That's a good thing. So this is all information that you can check out on the city directories. City directories are accessible via hard copy at Keenan Research Center, also via Ancestry, anywhere where you have internet and a paid connection to Ancestry. I think that's all I have, so we'll come back. We'll stop sharing here for a second. Now you should see our faces. I think that there was one question that I saw in the chat.
Susan. Yes. So the question of a house that's changed number, Erica answered that question. 1927 is the year where it went from one to another. And the resource you want to track down, and you can find it at the Atlanta History Center, is the 1927 city directory. Because in the street directory, where you look it up by street, they will give you both the old number in parentheses and the new number as it is now, as it has in after the change. And so you can see both. It's invaluable resource for knowing about that change time.
They did start smaller renumberings around 1900. Atlanta grew a lot, right? Like when you look at Reconstruction era Atlanta, things are booming, things are popping all over the place. And they tried multiple times to renumber and like give some sort of semblance of order to street name creation and numbering of houses, but it wasn't until 1927 that it actually kind of stuck. So I always encourage people, if you know that your house was built sometime in the 1920s or before that, start in 1927, find that number, and then track that number backwards to see when it disappears. And that's going to give you a sort of idea of when your house might have been built. It's also going to give you all of the different numbers that the house was known by. That's really helpful, especially if you're looking for building permits. We have building permits here for the city of Atlanta. Those cover from the late 1800s forward to 1980s. But it's only if your house was considered part of the city of Atlanta at the time of its building or modification, because you're not going to permit for city of Atlanta if you're not actually living in city of Atlanta, right? So that's a great resource if you are city of Atlanta during the time that your house was built. And there's also an annexation map if you're not sure. I'll find that annexation map and pop it in.
That's great. I also just want to add, I don't see any other questions, but please feel free to put any more questions in the chat. I posted some of the finding aids for some of the collections that Erica was talking about that are available at the History Center. I will note that some of the Fulton County tax plat books are actually digitized and available on that finding aids site. So if you click into any of those, there should be a link if there are any that are digitized. Pro tip, they're very large files, so it just might take a second for those to load, but you can actually view those at home. You don't have to come in, but if you would like to come in to see any of these records, we are available by appointment Wednesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And all you have to do is contact our reference desk if you see anything else that you'd like to take a look at here at the History Center. All right.
I do want to say, I want to
Go
say
ahead.
one more thing, if that's all right. And that's, and we'll get to I say that there's a question here too. It can be really intimidating to go to the county to ask for your records or to do this research because it's not something that like anyone is just going to be like going down to do generally, unless you're really into historic property research or really into home research. I really want to empower people that it's not that scary. I don't know that there'll be a lot of help from the people that are there, but it is something that when I go down and do that research, I always find something out that's interesting about the property that I'm researching or the people that own that property. So I do want to say like it is worth doing. It can be sort of intimidating at first, but after your first trip, I guarantee that you'll be hooked. You want to flip through all the
Yes.
deeds and plats.
Yes. And yeah, no, I've definitely had the experience sometimes because there are a lot of people who are working for law offices, for instance, that are trying to track property ownership for their job. And so some of them will consider you to be kind of in their way. And some of them will just be like, how can I help you? And so when you can find somebody that's, don't be intimidated by the people who, because you're not in their way, you're doing your research too. You have as much right to be there as anybody else. And if you can find someone who's helpful, you can actually, they're looking for a distraction. And you can help them by giving them an opportunity to put their expertise to work for somebody who's looking for information. I want to say actually one other thing. The city directories that you pointed us to before, the letter R is not renting, it's residence.
Oh, okay.
And so that wasn't telling us that that Charlie Beck was renting. It was telling us that that's where Charlie Beck did. So it starts with his name, and then it gives us like his employment and I think his place of employment, not just his occupation. And then R means that's where you can find him when he's off work.
Learn something every day.
There you go.
There's a question here. Can you copy and print the deeds from the courthouse? You can take photographs of any of them. There is also a copy service there that is for cost. I think it's like $50 or $1 a page, like 50 cents or $1. I can't remember what the
Yeah.
actual like fee is, but there is the ability to get a copy for sure. That works also for the plat maps. So if you're reading in your deed document and it says, you know, check this plat map out, you can get a copy of that plat map from the courthouse as well.
And
then,
some of those plat maps are actually also available at the Atlanta History Center. That's where I've had a lot of success looking in the Adair archives for those.
Yeah, there's a lot of different areas where plat maps are sort of stashed away that we have here, and that leads into the other question. The hours for the Keenan Research Center at the Atlanta History Center are Wednesday through Saturday from 10 till 4. You do need to make an appointment. If you show up, we may be closed because we don't know that you're coming. We have all decided that we're going to be clairvoyant in our next life. But until then, please email us at reference@atlantahistorycenter.com, or you can call us at 404-814-4040. Either of those methods will get a response within 48 hours to set up an appointment. So do plan ahead. Don't ask for, to come in tomorrow morning. That's not going to work. But if you do, let us know when you'd like to come in Wednesday through Saturday from 10 to 4. We'll generally be able to make an appointment for you on your preferred day. There is a question here about how can you get an updated copy of the plat map if the one in the courthouse isn't clear? And I don't know if this is a question, like if you have a copy and the copy at the courthouse is clearer, you can always ask for a rescan of that. If it is a issue with the copy that the courthouse has, that's something that they're not going to necessarily be able to find another copy of that to share with you.
Right.
But that is something that you could come in, you could do research to see if we have any other additional plats, or if there is a plat map that was shared with us, or if you're outside of Fulton County, DeKalb County, you can also check out other historical societies in the area to see if they have them. A lot of our collections that have plat maps are around sales of those properties. And a lot of those are stored or organized by district and land lot. So you will need to come prepared with the district and land lot to be able to look into those records.
And just as a reminder, I popped that the URL into the chat, so it's very easy to use.
All right, I think that is all of the questions. Of course, please feel free to reach out to us if you do have any other questions. We're so happy to help. Our next webinar, it is slated for September 13th, 2025, but keep an eye out on social media. Follow us, the Atlanta History Center, if you don't already, to kind of keep an eye out for that. We will also post a link to the registration on the NHPRC landing page, which I also added to the chat. And then here, we'll also send out this presentation to attendees after the fact, but please, scan these QR codes for our resource list and also feedback on this webinar. So your feedback is vital to us making our programming better. So just, yeah, thank you guys so much, and feel free to reach out.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.